Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing good today. I want to talk to you for just a few moments on one of my axioms. It's not original with me. It says, keep your friends close and keep your enemies even closer. You ever heard that? I looked it up. I Googled it, who said, and they're not really clear. It has been attributed to The Godfather, the 1974 film, The Godfather Part 2. But they say it's not original with them. And then I can't pronounce the Chinese general, but he wrote the book, The Art of War. It could be taken from him, but they're not sure. But I am sure that it's not a bad adage to add to your way of taking care of things, dealing with people. Keep your friends close and keep your enemies even closer. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that in just a moment. But before I do, let me talk to the pastors here in the state of Illinois, and I know this goes to other people as well. But I want to remind you, next week is a prayer conference, and I've got a great lineup. You're going to like these guys. They're not in another universe. You know, sometimes you get people, they're so far in another universe you can't hardly relate to them, and they can't hardly relate to you. But these are guys, they are pastors. They've had success as pastors, but it's just been nuts and bolts, just the nitty gritty of everyday life. I got Patrick Conley all the way down in South Carolina. He's actually my daughter's pastor in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and then all the way to two extremes in some ways, but very similar also in other ways. I've got Travis Hovde all the way up almost to the Canadian border in Minot, North Dakota. And I'll talk more about these guys when I introduce them. But just wonderful men of God, and their wives and some of their children will be with us. It'll be a special time. And also they'll be speaking at the Pastors Conference. I added that this year. Not to give you more things to do, but I've got these guys, and they are just down to earth. They're practical. If you could get just one good idea, it would be worth it. So it costs you a little bit of money to stay over one more night, but probably I suspect that most of us stay over on Friday night anyway, because it's a long drive home, those of you that have to rent hotel rooms. So plan on staying over and register. You can do it on our website. And go to the pastor's track at the Equip conference on Saturday. And we'll be out of there, I think, at least by 2 o'clock. Give you plenty of time to get back home for your services on Sunday. So it's a great weekend coming up, a great prayer conference or winter camp meeting coming up. And I know you'll enjoy it. I hope to see you there. Of course, everybody's welcome. The ministers and the laity, you're welcome there in Marion All Nations with Pastor Joplin and his great congregation. And also, let me remind you, you pastors should have received from me by this time a letter with 3 envelopes in it asking you to bring an offering. And again, I'm not hounding you you know that I'm not one of these guys that's constantly hounding you about sending money. But I always felt like the state events, if at all possible, was the state's gift to you. You guys pay the bills. You're faithful. You're faithful to the tithe covenant. And then I always felt bad. I go to camp meeting. I used to go to camp meeting, state events, and every service they're receiving offerings to raise the budget. And I'm thinking to myself, and maybe I shouldn't have thought it, but why do we send our tithe of tithe? And then there ought to be some consideration to that. And so I just kind of how I feel. It's not necessarily the right or the best way, but that's my gift to you. I try to give something back to you to invest in your life. And so I try to raise the budget for the state events, and by the grace of God, I've done so again. And so, but I do believe in giving, and this frees us up to give to things that matter. So I've got 3 offerings there. I don't care if it's $1 or $1,000, just that you've prayed about it and that you're intentional, and the plate's passing by and you're just reach in your wallet and pull out a piece of money. God will bless that, but God will greatly bless your church and bless you for intentionality. So those 3 offerings, one will be the missions offering. We got a missions trip to Bulgaria this year, Illinois. We've got a representation from our state going to Bulgaria. and they're paying their own way, but this will give, I want to give them some money. I'm going, Sanjay and I are going as well. Give us some money to buy some resources and help support the conference and the pastors there in Bulgaria. So the missions offering will be going toward that Illinois Church of God sponsored trip. And then the next night offering will be for the youth department. Our youth department, our state youth director and the youth board are doing a fabulous job. They have a lot of responsibility, a big budget, and I want to help them with youth camp and the expenses of youth camp and the other things that they do, like Teen Talent that's coming up here pretty soon as well. So let's give them a good offering. And then on Friday morning, we'll be receiving the offering, and it'll go to what I put as a special project. That special project is a pastor's and spouse retreat that I've got scheduled September the 19th through the 20th, if you want to go ahead and put that down, of this year. I'm still working the details out, but I've got Bishop Cooper, Tony Cooper, the administrative bishop for Southern Georgia. He spoke for me, had a pastor's conference in the NCR, and he did a fabulous job. He really connected well with the guys, and he'll do good for us. They're helping to sponsor it as well, but I'll need to raise the budget, and I'm going to ask you, laity and ministers, to invest in our pastors and their wives or their spouses, and let's pour into them. If they win, we all win. So anyway, so be in prayer and bring a special offering. You can bring it from your church. Ask your church if you've got missions money, if you've got general fund money that you're looking for opportunities to invest in the kingdom. Bring 3 good offerings that you can be intentional about blessing these needs in our state. But now, keep your friends close and keep your enemies even closer. I was reminded of this when I was looking in my journal a few days ago, and this has been a number of years ago, but I had a come to Jesus meeting with a man in my church. He wanted to meet with me, and so we met at Cracker Barrel, and I knew it wasn't going to be a good meeting. It'd been simmering for quite a while, and I knew he was upset at me, and I just had put it off and ignored it, and well, I had to take my medicine. And the way I put it in my journal, I won't mention the brother's name, but he took me to the woodshed, and really probably crossed the line in how he spoke to me. But I knew in my heart that some of it was justified, and so I took my medicine. And it was a tough meeting, and it was a little awkward after that for quite a while. But I made notes from that, and here's 4 things that I wrote in my journal that day, and it was a good reminder, maybe a good reminder to you, because there's going to be people in your church that you don't particularly like them, and they don't particularly like you. And when I say keep your friends close and your enemies even closer, I'm not necessarily talking about enemies in the way that we are at war with each other, but sometimes there is like almost a war going on. But if they're not your enemy outright, they're your distractors. They're not with you. There's a lot of people that are not against you. They're not necessarily for you. They're just there for their own reasons. You got a few people that are really with you, and then you got a few people, 10% are with you, 10% are really against you, and the 80% in the middle, you just kind of do your job, they go along with the flow. But boy, that 10% can really compound the trouble in your life. And so what had happened, I had made a promise to that guy, and I just either forgot about it or just kept putting it off, and I never circled back around and followed up on what I had promised. And it just simmered and festered until it really got ugly, and it shouldn't have never happened. And I had to take responsibility. And so here's the 4 takeaways that I had. First, the devil is in the details. And it's our job to get the deity in the details. But the devil gets in the details when we don't follow up on promises that we make. And so that's the first thing I took away from that. I have got to follow up on promises that I make. The second takeaway is I must make few promises. And when I do, I must be very clear with the person that I made the promises to. Because really what happened here is what I thought I promised is not what he heard. And people will read into what you say what they want to read into sometimes. And then he took it and just ran with it and blew it way out of proportion. And so I've got to be real clear on, ideally don't make many promises. Don't get up in the pulpit and make promises that you can't keep or you mean to keep, but you're busy and life goes on. Be careful how many promises you make. And when you do, keep them and make sure that you're real clear and the other person's real clear on what it is that you promised. And this is important to me. I can name you several examples. I guess in my line, this is a little side note here, but as an administrative bishop, I remember a good friend of mine, a church planner, he's trying to plant a church, and had a well-meaning general official came through, and man, he they had a great day, and he made a promise to that congregation. I'm sure he meant it at the time, a financial promise. He never followed through. He never followed up. And that wounded that pastor and wounded that church and it put a bad taste in their mouth for the whole denomination. I made these notes in my journal as a reminder. I got another good friend that had an aspiration and had a desire to be a state overseer someday. And some promises were made, and then they never followed up, never acknowledged it, never followed up. I'm sure at the time the promises that were made were meant. Good people. But life's busy, and you're flying through, and you're making phone calls, and you're talking in kind of on the fly at a state event, or you're on the phone with with people, with your members or whatever. And if you don't write it down, if you don't follow up, you have to follow. It may not matter to you, but it matters to them. And so that's what happened to this brother that took me to the woodshed. It didn't really matter. It wasn't that big a deal to me, but it was a big deal to him. And I disrespected him by not following up. And so the devil's in the detail. Follow up if you say you will. It may not matter to you, but it matters to them. Number 2, make few promises. And when you do, make sure they're clear. You're both clear on what it is you just promised. And then number 3, I need to listen to the subtle hints of those around me. And people kept, I don't know why it is. We all do this. We have trouble sometimes speaking to power. And you as a pastor, you can get insulated. People want you to like them. And so they won't tell you sometimes what you really need to hear. But they'll drop hints. They'll let you know. You'll hear a little ripple here, a little hint there. And it's easy. What we want is everything to be peaceful. And so we just try to tune it out and justify it and rationalize and keep putting it off. But listen to the hints of people. If I'd have listened, I had staff, I had church members trying to tell me, but I just ignored it. I let it ride, and it just got worse and worse. It's not going to go away. It got worse and worse. And then number 4, this is even a little bigger here, but it's important. I must not alienate my bases, the base in your church. You've got different bases in your church, and that's what happened. This person was an influencer in a base, in an element of my church. And when he got compromised by me not following through and a misunderstanding, and I just ignored it and let it get out of hand, well, he poisoned the whole group of my church. And I don't care what size church you have bases there. You have elements there. You have a group there. You have this group, and you have this group, and you have that group, and it's kind of like the parable of the sowing of the seeds. You have the different soils, and you just have them in your church, and you can ignore that. But they're there, and each base, it could be your elderly or older group, the ones that's been there since they came off the ark or their parents came off the ark, and you got the new people, you got the young people, you got people from that side of town and people from this side of town. You got all kinds of ways we divide ourselves up while we all come together and worship. And you got to know who your leaders are, and you got to keep them close to you. Keep your friends close and keep your enemies even closer. When I say enemies, it doesn't mean they're not Christians, but they're not with you necessarily. But you got to keep them in your life. You got to stay connected to them because they're going to pollute the whole base that they're a part of. And so that was a painful day for me. And it was a painful few weeks. I'm still reading about it, the aftermath in my journals. I'm going through this. It was a painful time. And part of it was no matter what I knew, no matter what I did, this guy, it really wasn't personal so much. It got personal, but he had trouble with authority. It could have been Jesus and he'd have had trouble. And so I rationalized and justified that and didn't handle something that should have been handled. And you're going to have people, there's going to be trouble, but you got to keep them in your life. You can't alienate them because it won't go away. It'll only get worse. So there's my little pep talk. Keep your friends close and keep your enemies even closer. All right. God bless you. Those of you in Illinois, especially our ministerial team, I hope to see you next week. Today is Wednesday. Thursday week, I hope to see you there in Marion, and we're going to have a great time. In the meantime, I pray that you have a great weekend. God bless you. Let's keep running to win. We'll see you around the bend.